We begin today with a media scandal engulfing the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC. The Director General has resigned amidst mounting questions over the BBC's handling of two child sex abuse reports. The BBC scandal also has implications on the other side of the Atlantic here in the United States. Former BBC Director General Mark Thompson is the incoming New York Times Company chief executive. He was at the helm of the BBC last year when the investigation into Jimmy Saville's alleged child sex abuse was dropped. Thompson claims he was unaware of the program's investigation and had no involvement in the decision to cancel the report.
The newspaper that led the way in covering up the Pizzagate scandal was run by the man who helped protect notorious UK paedophile Jimmy Saville. Mark Thompson, who was the New York Times CEO at the time, was previously Director General of the BBC. At the time, the UK's most prolific paedophile Jimmy Saville raped hundreds of children and murdered countless others while working for the BBC. He's now chairman and CEO of CNN Worldwide. When the idea was first floated that there was a massive paedophile ring at the highest levels of power, it was almost unanimously rejected by the mainstream media and the people alike. Nobody wanted to believe that such a deviant and degenerate collective could exist in the modern world, let alone in the United States. Yet as more evidence was released through WikiLeaks and the tireless research by the alternative community, the true sinister depths of the crimes of the elite began to materialise.
Newsnight is also under scrutiny for failing to broadcast a report on child sex abuse allegations against the popular BBC personality Jimmy Saville, who's accused of abusing potentially hundreds of victims. On Monday, head of news Helen Bowden and her deputy, Stephen Mitchell, also stepped aside in wake of the scandal. Instead, a series of tributes to Jimmy Saville were aired across the BBC's radio and TV network last year after his death.
Here we go for a warm-up right now, then. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Top of the Pops. Ooh.
He was a pop pioneer.
And how about that, then?
And a multi-million-pound charity fundraiser. He made us belt up in the 70s.
Click every trick. Now then.
And fixed it for thousands of kids' dreams to come true. For 60 years, Jimmy Saville has been part of our lives, a great British eccentric.
Well, last month, nearly a year after Jimmy Saville's death, ITV released a documentary called Exposure, The Other Side of Jimmy Saville.
And I opened the door and I walked in and Saville was sat in the chair with the right side of his body facing me. And there was a girl of about 14 with long brown hair, sat on his knee. He had his left arm up a skirt, and he was kissing her, but what I distinctly remember, and that's the image that sticks in my mind, was the fact as I opened the door, he turned his head and it was just his tongue that was just sort of coming out of a mouth that stuck in my mind. It was that image. So it wasn't just like a peck on the cheek that actually jumped on his knee and sort of done it spontaneously. It was a definite sexual advance to this girl.
Lay out the Jimmy Saville story and the overall, we're talking about two sex scandals that are bringing down the leadership of the BBC.
I mean, I've really focused on the Saville aspect of the scandal thus far. And what I can say is I think that this has been an enormous scandal. You're talking about hundreds of people coming forward, most of them women, who are saying they were abused by him in schools, in hospitals, in psychiatric facilities across the country. And this is all coming to light now. So it's a pretty exceptional case.
So tell us the story of the one woman that you profiled in the New York Times who had been trying to come forward for decades.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tragic story. Deborah said she's was abused by Jimmy Saville at a reform school back in the 70s. And for years, she said whenever she heard him mentioned in connection with sexual abuse, she tried calling up newspapers. She tried getting her story out there, and nobody wanted to speak with her. Nobody was interested. So I think this is somebody who this has been extremely challenging for her to finally get her story out.
Well, explain, though, what the situation was, why Jimmy Saville had anything to do with the school that Deborah Cogger attended.
Well, this is what's really interesting. He had these long-standing relationships with different institutions across the country, including this school called the Duncroft School for Girls, which was a school for kind of troubled teenage girls who were also extremely intelligent. And he would come by with cigars and kind of crummy records that he got at the studio. And it sounds like, I mean, what the victims are saying now, and there are several of them who were at this school, they're saying that he basically had free reign of the place.
And yet she came forward and she said then what was happening, but people told her to be quiet.
She said she was told to be quiet. She said that, you know, that other girls who were abused even sort of more horrifically were shut in a room in isolation until they recanted. So there, you know, this was a pretty awful scandal. In
Saville's 1976 autobiography, Love is an Uphill Thing, he described how he and another man had spent the night naked in a caravan with a group of girls. The girls were young enough for their mothers to come looking for them. Saville wrote, quote, "I train my men well, and to date we have not been found out," which after all is the 11th commandment, is it not? Unquote. I wanted to bring Tim Gopsell into the conversation, editor of the Free Press magazine in London. Your piece, "The Saville Scandal Defines the BBC." The BBC not only killed the investigation of Saville, but it ended up just doing all these laudatory programs about him. Tim, why is it defining the BBC?
Because the one half of it didn't know what the other half was doing. It's a big organisation, and as a broadcaster, it doesn't just cover news and current affairs. It covers the whole range of broadcasting. It does comedy, entertainment, drama, game shows, quiz shows, reality. It does the lot, which means it's a very, very big organisation. And the journalistic side is kept deliberately separate, so that it isn't controlled by management, so that it doesn't have to toe any line laid down by anybody. It is kept at a kind of arm's length to guarantee its independence. The consequence was that while the Newsnight programme was preparing its expose of Saville, another half of the BBC was going ahead with these tributes. The cancellation of the Newsnight programme, people are prepared to believe, had nothing to do with the fact that the tributes were coming as well. It just looked very bad for them. But the real problem wasn't killing the Newsnight programme. The thing the BBC really did wrong was to run all those tributes to a man who was pretty widely known, at least in kind of media circles, to have been a terrible paedophile for years and years.